Welcome back to Rare Elvis Photos. Hope y'all are doing great. Thank you for you subscribers. Thank you for the members of the channel. If you've joined me from Joe Sin's Rare Elvis Photos on Facebook or Instagram, welcome to YouTube, vice versa. Welcome to Facebook if you join me from YouTube. We're reading Child Bride, okay? And where we're at on Child Bride right now is an interesting place. Suzanne Finstead is the author of this book. Okay, she did a lot of research. She brought Priscilla in, sat Priscilla down with somebody that had accused her of trading to meet Elvis, and they did the equivalence of lie detector tests with police officers, and they found that Priscilla was not honest 100% of the time, or close to 99.5 or 99, something like that. And Grant was honest 100% of the time. So, take that as it is. Appreciate you leaving me super thanks. Appreciate you leaving me the stars, I guess, on Facebook. We're going to get to reading, okay? And thanks for sharing this around. Thanks for making it to the end. And thanks for joining me on this adventure. All right, we are here. Suzanne had just called Priscilla a poser. And that's kind of where we ended it. In her way, she loved Elvis. Whether or not she was in love with him, he had become a father figure to her, and she would later tell another beau how Elvis used to call himself Daddy when they were alone. Okay, that's interesting. Okay. Elvis had this hard time dealing with mother and the little girl that I was to him. I didn't know it then, but I finally realized in later years that he was a father to me. He was my mentor. I hadn't heard Priscilla make that claim. Now, we all know that Linda and Elvis kind of had according to Linda, kind of mothering relationship to Elvis. I've never heard anywhere else of this daddy claim, that any of the girls ever said that he acted that way, said that. So I'm just curious what your thinking is on that. All right. In the spring of 1964, Elvis met someone who'd have a profound influence on his life. Larry Geller, who I've emailed, by the way. He and I have emailed about him coming on the show, and I hopefully can bring him on for y'all. Larry entered Elvis's world as his personal barber. Jay Sebring, who was later killed, along with Sharon Tate in the Manson murders, had arranged the introduction. Now, in the post-Elvis literature, Larry occasionally would be hyperbolized as a wild-eyed, bearded swami who cast a spell over Elvis. But in fact, I'm having trouble talking, sorry. In fact, he was a clean-shaven, soft-spoken, easygoing man, though raised Jewish, had embraced New Age spirituality. Now, Larry, like Elvis, was attracted to the metaphysical and pondered the deeper philosophical questions that the Memphis Mafia did not begin to fathom, and thus they ridiculed it. Elvis and Larry lived for philosophy. They lived for spirituality, unanswerable questions on the meaning of life. Elvis's interest was nascent, while Larry had done an extensive amount of reading and had shared the knowledge in his books with Elvis, who had consumed them, as he did all things that he loved, with the appetite of a longshoreman. Larry became, in the Elvis vernacular, Lawrence of Israel, assuming the role of spiritual advisor and becoming a trusted confidant. So that's 1964, and we know that Priscilla wanted to get rid of anybody and everybody. Having a new person come in, that had to have driven her completely nuts. Anybody to take the time away, because here's the thing. In relationships, in healthy relationships, they say it's good to have some separation from each other, but you got to have personal time, right? You've got to have time. And of course, the more people that were around Elvis, the less time Priscilla had. All right. He did not arrive, as had been written, a full-blown guru to Elvis, according to Jerry Schilling, who had met Elvis as a youngster when he participated in the Memphis Mafia football games. After Jerry graduated college and was about to start teaching history, Elvis asked him to go on the road with him. He joined the entourage as Elvis was boarding his bus to drive to L.A. to start filming Tickle Me. God, we had these major hours of conversation, Jerry recalled of that first bus trip with Elvis. Unlike the other guys, we were all these macho ex-football players. Jerry felt that Larry Geller brought another dimension to Elvis. That Jerry, who was more open to philosophical debate, considered fascinating. So Jerry liked Larry Geller, found him fascinating. Elvis was having a difficult time coping with his enormous fame and yearned to understand why he, a simple truck driver from the South, had been chosen for such adulation. He looked to Larry and Larry's library, which included books about everything from Buddhism to Christianity to numerology, to help guide him on his spiritual journey. Elvis entered a period of intense seeking and discovery, most of which made the Colonel, the entourage, and Priscilla, all of whom were vying for control of Elvis, very nervous. In fact, it says exceedingly nervous. Priscilla was wary of Larry Geller from the outset. She was jealous, like the rest of the household, of the time Elvis spent with him, but she was also uncertain enough to feign an interest in Elvis's passion, to be a poser, to be a faker. That being said, let's come to a little bit of defense of Priscilla and anybody that would have a relationship with Elvis. If you didn't have an interest in his passions, why would he want to be around you? So I guess I get it in some ways, that part of it. As an experiment, Elvis, who was strongly opposed to recreational substances, decided in the mid-60s to try. It starts with L, it ends with D, and there's an S in the middle, okay? Under Larry's guidance to find out whether there was indeed another level of consciousness. And he persuaded Priscilla and Jerry Schilling to join them on this trip at Graceland. Elvis was very serious about it, recalled Jerry. He said, "We're going to experiment with this, but we have to do it the right way." See, Sonny West was the designated driver. I was a health fanatic. Mr. Malik, and not into substances, but still being young and the baby of the group, anything Elvis wanted me to do within reason, I felt very safe. I was surprised that Priscilla was going to do it. I don't think she was curious at all. For some reason, she took it. It was one of those uncharacteristic things. Now, we were in the upstairs part of Graceland, a conference room, which I think now is Lisa's room, and we sat down at a long table. Now, the group recalled Jerry was cautious. I don't know what the normal amount was, but I think Elvis didn't take all of his. The first thing I remember is noticing that something was changing. Excuse me. Elvis was sitting on a chair, and I just saw his legs get smaller and smaller until he became this little chubby boy, and I started laughing. He got up and got caught up in the laughing, so we all had these laughing things going on over and over. Priscilla's response to dropping this was very illuminating. She freaked out, according to Larry Geller, and ran from mirror to mirror screaming that she was ugly, sobbing at Elvis's feet that he didn't really love her, her two greatest insecurities, and her conscious state. Now, I'd left the room and was on the floor inside of a walk-in closet in the master bedroom, recalled Jerry, and Priscilla came into the room. She didn't see me. She was looking in the mirror and brushing up against walls, just like a cat. Now, when the effects of this L that ends with D and has an S in the middle wore off, Priscilla found herself in the same closet, purring. That was the first and last trip for Elvis and Priscilla. I think that it was pretty scary for all of us that we even attempted it, said Jerry. For Priscilla, substances were never a serious option, and she was just too intent on maintaining control. So she was very, very control-focused. Control freak, OCD, I guess, maybe, which, once again, a lot of people have that, and I'm not saying anything wrong if you have that. Priscilla who longed for greater intimacy with Elvis, soon had another reason to resent Larry's interest into their lives. See, although Larry was not responsible for this development, Elvis told Larry that when he first became famous, he was with so many women that he was placed in the hospital for exhaustion, teaching him that he was not a machine and that intimacy for its own sake without love was meaningless. Let's talk about that just for a second, and we'll continue to read. I'm an entertainer. I've been one, and I guess I thought I was Elvis when I was younger, and the girls were excited, and I had a lot of interested suitors. So I'm not lacking experience by any means in that department. And I kind of came to the same conclusion in a sense. That you have to have love. You have to have a connection. You have to have emotion, intimacy, for it really to be as rewarding. And I think Elvis at that time, think about Elvis. By the time he was with Priscilla, Elvis told the private investigator when there was the case against him that this woman said she was pregnant, that he had known 5,000 women. A lot of people say, "Oh, it's impossible, no way." I'm here to say that it's not impossible. Not in the way of, in a sense, casual encounters, partially with them, making out, doing this, doing that. If you think about it, from 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, that's what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 59, 60. 7 years. In those 7 years, there's 21,000 days. Mathematically, it's easily possible. So I believe that I believe that passage there, that Elvis had told him, that since he became famous, he was with so many women, he was placed in the hospital for exhaustion, teaching him that he was not a machine and that intimacy for its own sake without love was meaningless. And so, as part of his spiritual cleansing in the 60s, Elvis determined to abstain from it altogether for a time to demonstrate that he had control over the weakness of his flesh, just like Jesus and other religious teachers. You understand this Southern mentality, explained Larry. You understand fundamentalism. And with people who grow up in that soil, well, intimacy is probably one of the most important subjects. Elvis felt that it could either uplift you or destroy you, and it was as simple as that. Priscilla wasn't trying to get into a relationship with somebody that had a higher thought conscious, that had been around the world. She wanted to experience it all, and she wanted, as you normally do when you're young. And according to this book, she experienced it all. But she had to stop experiencing it all because of Elvis. Not everything, if you think about it. Her claims about her and other girls that happened constantly and videotaped. That's so, but it was some sort of a controlled thing. Maybe Elvis said, "Oh, you need to have experiences and pleasures, but not with another guy." It's an interesting little touchy subject here that we're on. All right, so Larry said that Elvis felt that intimacy could either uplift you or destroy you. Simple as that. It's a power that's so important that if you misuse it, you're going to pay the consequences. And he did not want to, for his own self-image, feel that he was a promiscuous person, and most importantly, he didn't want to misuse what Elvis was. He respected the Elvis persona. He also confided in Larry that the same intimate insecurity he had confessed to Priscilla in Bad Nauheim, his powerful need to please, which came from being a performer, and his fear that he might not meet a woman's expectations during that, was another reason that he withdrew from it. Elvis the image was godlike, said Larry. It was powerful. He was Superman. Therefore, he had to be the greatest lover. Therefore, he didn't want anyone talking. He didn't want any secrets leaked. And he was very careful about who he fooled around with, because he didn't want someone to say, well, this is not the world's greatest lover. And I think that he felt a certain inadequacy about his own prowess. Now, we know that Sybil Shepherd kind of said that. And that makes total sense. The whole idea that without love, without meaning, it's kind of an empty thing. Because Sybil wasn't in love with Elvis. Sybil didn't feel the need to protect, love, and nurture Elvis. She just wanted to gossip about what it was like to be with him, and she insulted him. That's why you don't want to give it away to somebody like that. So, I mean, that's just another way to kind of look at this section that we're reading. Priscilla's intimate life with Elvis, which had been a problem since they met, now blossomed into a crisis in their relationship. Priscilla had been driven by her physical impulses since childhood. She was also a ripe 20 to Elvis's worldwide 31. She had no interest in his spiritual journey or the books he pleaded with her to read. She wanted to do it. He wanted to see inside her soul. During his moratorium on this, Priscilla literally dropped to her knees one night as Elvis was reading to her from one of the philosophy books, begging him to do it. He fell asleep holding this book, and the moment encapsulated the problems and basic incompatibilities in their relationship. Now, she wrote about that in Elvis and Me, her book, how she begged him to consummate their love, and how he fell asleep. Different times. And she had a choice to leave. She had a choice to call her mom and dad and leave. She didn't, though. Now, I do feel bad sometimes. I think I still can defend Priscilla back in those days. Some of her decisions, some of her thoughts. I think we all can kind of relate, maybe empathize or sympathize. Elvis's self-questioning reached a peak during the long bus ride from Tennessee to California to begin shooting one of the most awful films, in my opinion, he ever shot, which was Frankie and Johnny, in May of 1965. He believed he experienced a vision of Jesus in the desert, and interpreted it to mean that he should join a monastery, that his epic popularity had been given to him so that he could teach the masses about the divine. And that changed his life, said Larry. When we got to L.A., Elvis was totally different. We go into the den, he closes the doors. Then on the other side are Joe, Red, and Alan, and they're listening. That's it, Elvis told Larry. I quit. I've had it. I'm through with show business, Larry. I said, what? What do you mean? Larry, after what I've seen, I'm not going to go out and make another teeny bopper movie, responded Elvis. You've got me on a spiritual path, and that's good. I want you to find me a monastery. I want to become a monk. Elvis was pilloried after his death for this detour from the path of fame, but he was, in the opinions of those closest to him, completely sincere. Completely. He was trying to get out of making a movie that he wasn't happy making, said his later Vegas backup singer, Kathy Westmoreland. And he wanted to stop making movies, and he wanted to know what to do with his life, and yearned for the public again, for live performances. And he was questioning everything. and wanted to go to a monastery, and he even checked one out. The spiritual leader, whom Elvis met at the monastery, convinced him that he was on the right path already, according to Kathy, that God had him where he was supposed to be. It helped to establish in his mind that he was doing what he was supposed to do. He was just being used in a different way. Not everyone had to be a priest. To sing was Elvis's calling, his pulpit. That was how he touched people's souls. I'm going to stop right there. And that, I think, right there is the catalyst to Elvis returning back to live performing. It was Larry Geller, and it was, as Elvis said, he experienced a vision of Jesus in the desert. 1965, that was the catalyst. Almost going to a monastery and to be a monk for a while. Elvis was just ready to get away from Priscilla. He was ready to get away from the movies, get rid of Colonel Parker. It's as simple as that. And because he felt like he had a higher calling, a higher purpose, and he was wasting it all. And I think that's completely normal for somebody of his stature and his spiritualness to think that, to fear that, and to reach out and try to do something different. Anyhow, this is Rare Elvis Photos, Joe Sins Rare Elvis Photos on Facebook, TikTok, YouTube. Thanks so much for joining me. I always enjoy reading and talking with y'all, hearing your opinions in the comments. Y'all leave me a lot of great comments, and I do read them all. I promise you I look at them, and eventually you do get a heart and you get a like from me to show you that I've read them. All right, till next time.